Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Katie Weaver Show. This is Katie. I'm your host. I'm so happy to be here. If you are listening live or to an archive or a replay, I want to welcome you to the show. If you are live, it is the 28th of January at about 11 a.m. Pacific time. And wow, it's the 28th of January. This month, it's been the longest year of our lives. And yet, here we go. I don't know how January always manages to feel like it's moving so fast and so slow all at the same time, but here we are. I hope that everyone is well. I want to let you know that I am over in the chat room, and you can find me over there by heading over to 12radio.com. Click on the chat button, and you'll be redirected into the Facebook chat. And you'll see my banner there at the top of the page. It is a private group, so you'll need to ask for entry if you haven't already, or join the group. I think you can just do that now. But at any rate, that's how to find it. If you would rather watch than listen, you can do that by heading over to YouTube or Facebook and look for Katie Weaver Domestic Mystic, and you'll see the live stream. So that's what's going on. Amy says, January is 952 days long, right? That, of course, is Amy from the chat. If you would like to chat, you can just comment on either live stream that you're watching, and the tech that I'm using shows me all of those comments. Or if you are in the chat room and you're commenting that way, I do hop over there and check the chat frequently. So one way or another, we can connect. Easy peasy, right? Well, maybe. We'll see. Not going to be crazy. I do want to say that if you won something in the birthday giveaway, it has finally shipped, or the Christmas giveaway, it has finally shipped. So it's only taken me this entire month to do it, but it's done now. They're all in the process of the post now. So I know, ridiculous, completely ridiculous. I agree. Oh, well, let's get into it. I wanted to continue our conversation about past lives this week. So I'm curious to know if anybody did the meditation. I know some of you did that I have talked to, but if you did the meditation that I sent out last week in Luminous, and if you did, what your experience was like, and if you want to share anything, this would be a great time to do that. But we're really hitting right now on why past life work is important and some of the more fascinating parts of past life work. So that's where it's at for me. It is very cold here. And for some reason, our thermostat is resetting itself to 60 degrees over and over every day. And so every time you walk past it, you've got to double check. So we replace the battery, we reset it. It also keeps transitioning itself into Celsius, and we have to switch that back. And you have to switch that back by sticking a pin in it. So looks like we have to buy a new thermostat. Luckily, no biggie, and Scott can do that himself. So no big deal. But that's a little weird, especially when it's sub-zero and I've woken up too many mornings now to it being about 62 degrees in here, and I am not feeling it. It probably is. Trying to fly the coop, for sure. Yeah, what kind of thermostat goblins is this? I will say, though, we've owned this house for 25 years, and I think we've only replaced the thermostat once. So maybe it's just time, Plus, you can get a smart one now that connects to your phone, and I don't know. That might not be better, to be honest, because the thermostat wars that already happened in this house are intense. Scott always wants this house to be colder than I do. It's a non-stop issue in the winter. But something about then put on socks if your feet are cold? I mean, what? Any rate, that's happening. And I have to tell you, we've had the craziest situation. Yesterday we went to buy gas, and Scott's debit card declined. Weird. Okay. Shouldn't have. So he grabbed my debit card. It also declined. Weird. Okay. So we used a card that from a different bank and it was fine. And we were like, well, maybe our bank's having a little problem. There's plenty of money in our account, so I don't know why that's happening. And then we went to use our card later that night, and our cards declined again. So I called the bank today. They had put a fraud hold on both of our cards. Mine for an online purchase that was legit. And, it's okay. It's okay. I do not want to see us get defrauded or, I get it. They're feeling real skittish about stuff like this right now. But the thing that blocked Scott's debit card. Now, you will only know why this is funny if I preface this with, this is a Mormon bank. It's not owned by the Mormon church, but it is owned by members. And you have to be a member of the Mormon church to be a member of this bank. Which might lead you to wonder, why am I banking at this bank? Well, my dad helped me set up this account when I was 15 years old. I've always banked here. And my home loan is here. So I've continued to bank with this. It's a credit union, but I've continued with this credit union my entire adult life because that's where my bank or my home loan is, and it makes more sense, right? Okay. So that being said, so I called the bank this morning, and say our cards aren't working, and she's like, "Oh yeah, there's was a fraud alert on both of your cards." So we clear up mine, then we move on to Scott's, and she's like, "Oh yeah, oh ma'am, someone tried to use his card on Saturday at the Idaho liquor store." I said, "Yeah, that wasn't fraud." And she sits there in silence, stunned silence for a minute, and says, "Oh, well, I guess we can unblock it then." What? That's right. It had to have been fraud. Am I fixing to get kicked out of my credit union? Maybe, but I don't know. I mean, my home loan is there, so I don't think they'd want to do that with us. But apparently, if you use your card at some sinner's place, they're going to shut you down. Right? What decade is this? I know. I kind of want to go spend a little money at a sex store or something. Just to see what happens. Maybe nothing. Who knows? Anyway, so note to self. Use your other account if you're going to go to a sinner store. My God. Oh my gosh, I'm dead. That is crazy. But her response was even funnier. She was like, she had the smoking gun for me. "Oh, ma'am, you are not going to believe this." Right? Okay, buddy. Okay. And by the way, the Huckleberry Bourbon, it was divine. So was the new bottle of Hendrick's Gin. Their Cabaret edition. It doesn't suck. Yeah. So it was worth it. It was worth it. I'm just still laughing about it. That poor girl's response. To be fair, I don't want fraud on my account. To be fair, but yeah. Denise said she's had 2 credit cards replaced the last couple of months because of fraud. Oh yeah, it's a bullshit deal, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I do appreciate the bank for trying to protect us from fraud, for sure. But that whole conversation just really made me laugh. I'm still kind of giggling about it. Wild. Okay. Right. Sid said, "I know that feel of perpetual stress from the constant threat of identity theft or hacking accounts. I've had several occasions of fraud, and it's always a mini heart attack." It's for sure. Yeah. There's certainly plenty to worry about. Yeah. Scott has had to replace his debit card 3 times in the last year. I have not, which has been super nice, but I know it's wild. It's very frustrating. One thing that's frustrating is when you get a new card, then everything that normally just does an automatic charge is suddenly not, and you've got to remember all of those things and fix them, and ugh, Jesus, frustrating. There's been some online stuff. Oh, this is a really serious sad problem, but people falling for scammers, very vulnerable. Let me back that up. Very vulnerable people falling for people that are pretending to be somebody that they're not. And oh my goodness. So last week I just did a story on this on my true crime podcast, but a lady in France, she had just gotten divorced. She was very, very vulnerable, very naive about the internet, and had just kind of started using social media. She hadn't really understood social media very well in the past. So, an older lady that just was kind of out there to the wolves. And a woman messaged her on Facebook or some social media site and told her that she is Brad Pitt's mother and that she feels like this lady is exactly who her son needs. Now, it's easy to roll your eyes right now and be like, oh, for God's sake, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Yeah, it is. It is. But again, I think who we're talking to wasn't really grounded in, you know, in a good place of reality. She was struggling a lot. And so, anyway, she hooks her up with a connection to talk to her son. So now she has a new scammer messaging her that is Brad Pitt. And Brad Pitt is having major health issues and doesn't have any money to pay for all of the surgeries he needs because all of his money is tied up in his divorce with Angelina Jolie. That's what Brad Pitt is telling this lady, heavy on the air quotes. So she unfortunately falls for it hook, line, and sinker. And is messaging him for months back and forth. Of course, he's love bombing her, super complimentary, making her feel better about herself. And she's been sending him money, like a lot of money. She just got divorced and received quite a large settlement in the divorce. So she's just sending money to this person. And then she sees some news articles about Brad Pitt being in a new relationship. So she confronts her Brad Pitt about this, and he gives her a whole song and dance about how that's not real, and it's just a front we're putting on for the media, and you're my only one, and all of this stupid stuff. Well, unfortunately, she falls completely for it and allows it, and kind of gets off of his the trail of this for a little while, and then she starts seeing more articles pop up. So she does quite a bit more investigations, and it finally sinks into her that she has been had, and she's horrified, and she's angry, and she doesn't know what to do. So she goes to the police. And the police, of course, dig into it and discover that, of course, as everyone knows, she was scammed. You guys, she gave that scammer $800,000. Yeah. Yeah. Now, how? I know. How? They ran this story. A popular news agency in France ran this story and ended up having to take it down because they had named her in the story, and she received so much ridicule and bullying from the story that they had to pull it down. It's incredibly sad, and it's easy to go, well, that's just stupid. That would never happen to me, and it probably wouldn't happen to you, but oof. There are some very gullible, vulnerable, naive people out there who this stuff actually does still work on. Another case of a mama from Colorado who recently unalived her children on the demand of the online person she was talking to. Thought she was talking to a famous person in England, and in fact that's where she was found after she killed her children. She left the country immediately, flew to England, and was very near where that actor resides when she got picked up. She was absolutely sure it was him that she was talking to. Again, is she unwell? Very much so. But somebody online told her that she needed to get her children out of the picture so they could have a relationship, and she did. Another lady back east or in the south last year that was caught poisoning her husband at the behest of an online scammer who was pretending to be a famous person. Like, this is happening right and left. Just be aware of it. I know it's probably not going to happen to you guys, but be aware of it for all the vulnerable people in your lives because it's working. It's making people feel special. It's making people feel needed and wanted in a way that they weren't. And it's working. Yeah. Oh, Sherry said the scam that her mother-in-law likes is give me 5,000 and we'll turn it into 200,000. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's another really bad one. So just know it's out there. Don't fall for anything. A famous person is not reaching out to you on the internet. They never will. It's not happening. Absolutely don't go there. Well, let's take a look at Luminous. Oh, let's see. I want to share the link first. So Luminous, of course, is the magazine that I publish every week with the help from my friends over at 12 Listen, then 12 Radio. Hey, Laurie. So you may have already received Luminous in the mail this morning in your email, but I'm going to send it out to you again just in case. Okay. So, moving on to new art. I am unabashedly in love with Valentine's Day. Even though it is a ridiculous commercial holiday, I love it nonetheless. I had a show and tell for you and I forgot. I got to upload the pictures really quick. But I do. I love all the Valentine's Day stuff. I love all the hearts and the love and the, you know, grossly Halloweeny stuff. So you know I'm going to hammer you with that stuff. You just know it. Okay. Get my pictures uploaded. Scott and I have been playing with stained glass a little bit more. I wanted to see how I would do with making my own designs. And so basically for my theory, I know some people do it differently, but for me, it's either purchasing a design or coming up with one and then cutting it in vinyl and then sticking that vinyl to the glass and cutting out your shapes from there. And so for me, I am not a great cutter. I have good tools for cutting, but I'm not a great cutter myself. So I really like to have the cushion of having the everything just cut in vinyl and stuck on my glass. It gives me a better chance of being successful. And, you know, I think the more I cut glass, the better I should get. But I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if that's true. I mean, I think it's true. It must be. And my glass isn't terrible. It's just it's a lot more work when you're not very good at it versus people that are great and can just use their little scoring tool to make these fancy little cuts and their glass is cut to size versus somebody like me who gets as close as they can by, you know, whatever means possible and then has to put it on a cutter or a grinder and work it that way too. But it's fine. I'm sure it's getting a little better all the time. But anyway, so moral of the story, I made these designs and then cut them and then, you know, did all the things. I do all the work. I do the design, I pick the glass, I cut the glass, I foil the glass, and then Scott does the soldering piece. I'm going to learn how to solder too one of these days, but thus far I have not. Okay. But I gotta say, stained glass is pretty fun. Oh, and also my little mugs that I think I already talked about this, but I was playing a little bit with pottery. And my little mugs that I made, my little espresso cups, came out of the kiln a few days ago, and I am in love with them. I'm using them every day. So I want to share those with you too. But yeah, I'm falling in love with pottery. I wish I would have taken some pottery classes in high school because I do not know much. But luckily I have the internet and Matea, who took pottery in high school and also was a pottery TA because she loved it so much. So she's been a really good resource for me on that front. But all I've made so far are these two tiny espresso cups, and I'm in love. I actually have big plans. I had a bunch of tools and stuff show up today. So I'm just putting those pictures up in the chat room and then we'll keep going. And here I thought I was so organized and ahead of schedule this morning. It's because I hadn't done all my things. Okay. All right. So I put everything up in the chat room, but I'm going to show you some things in the live stream. So these are just these are the hearts and the things that we made on our little stained glass tour the other day. I have a sister-in-law that wants to learn to do stained glass, and so she's going to come over one day this week, and she already sent her design, so I'm getting it cut today so it's ready. We're both going to make a matching thing together that looks like a ton of fun. It's like a half moon with mountains peeking up from it. I think it's going to be awesome. But yeah. And then these littler hearts actually are going on Valentine's, on hand-foiled Valentine's. But aren't they cute? I love them. I mean, I even managed to get embellishments this time with my little beads. I'm learning a few things. Slowly but surely. Okay, let me show you my espresso cups. So this one, I put little tiny roses around the front of it. And I love them. I'm so happy with the way they turned out. I mean, these are rough. I know. There's a lot of room for improvement. That's why they're just for me. And then this one I did in this little daisy design that really turned out so cute the way it fired with that glaze. And here they are in use. Yeah, so much fun. So I'm going to make a few more espresso cups, I think, but then I want to expand to full-size mugs too. I think I can do that. And yeah, I get to experience a little bit bigger pieces of pottery. And I have some other plans of things I want to make too. But yeah, so there's a few actual show and tells. I have been doing some things. I've been devouring books this month. It's like all I really want to do is read. So I finally started buying the Audible version along with every book I buy. You know, with Amazon, I don't know if you know this, but if you buy the Kindle version, if you buy the Audible version at the same time, the Audible version is way, way, way less money, and it will automatically link up to both apps so that you can listen to a book for a while and then close it and then open Kindle up and it will go right to that page. So those apps talk to each other so that you can listen, because honestly, I've taken a pretty big step back from social media. Everything feels kind of unsafe right now and unsure, and I'm tired of it. So I'm just I'm really happy to take a step back right now for the most part. I'm still online and on social media some, but I'm not spending nearly the amount of time on social media I was. I'm just doing art and listening to books. And I'm really happy with that. I also have some polymer clay jewelry that I developed a couple of weeks ago. I forgot to bring it in here so I can show you, but working on some things that direction too. I'm just having fun. And I don't know if any of it will make it to Etsy or not. Some of it will eventually, but some of it won't. But I'm just having fun and spending my time the way I want to. Yeah, right? Lillian said sounds healthy to me. Me too. Me too. I don't mind the amount of time I spend on social media. I don't begrudge it really because a lot of it is, directly applies to work that I do. But at the same time, I'm very weirded out right now about our safety online and also just about whose pocket I'm filling by where I spend my time online. Kind of done with all of them, you know? So, anyway, let's get into Luminous. Okay, so I called this the Echoes of the Past edition because, well, yeah, we're going to keep our conversation rolling about past lives, talking about past lives in children. This is such a fascinating topic. And we've talked about it before many times, but it is such a fascinating topic. For me, really considering past lives in children is one of the things that really made me interested in doing past life work when it all first came up for me. And hearing all of these stories of kids, my God, it's amazing. Amazing. There was a boy in India quite a few years ago that solved his own murder from a past life. Like, got an arrest of the neighbor who had murdered him in that lifetime and buried him in the backyard. Yeah, it is crazy. And I have a lot of stories to share with you today if we can get to them. But my article is about this topic. So a lot of times this is kids saying things like, when I was big, or I used to live in a house with, or remember when I was your mommy, or you aren't my mom, or you're not my parents, or when I was, when I had black hair, or things like that. It's always some identifier that isn't who they are in this life. Past life memories, most researchers are finding that they happen in kids somewhere between 2 and 6. I'm sure they happen earlier, but they don't have good enough communication skills to share it. But between 2 and 6, they still remember. Yeah. When they get older, those memories fade. So, of course, it was Dr. Ian Stevenson who has compiled multiple books in his lifetime and in his work of past life experiences in children. He especially was in India and in the Middle East, touring around. Yes, he documented over 2,500 cases of children talking about their past lives. Really interesting stuff. So a few of the more famous stories. James Leninger. So this kid was from Louisiana, and he was having nightmares about crashing a plane. He was really little, too. And he just kept having these horrible nightmares, waking up screaming, telling his parents about being a World War II fighter pilot. Not saying World War II, but describing things like the name of the aircraft, the name of the ship. The ship was the Natoma Bay. And a fellow pilot named Jack Larson. So, his parents are like, what the heck is this kid talking about? But his dad did a little research and discovered there was a pilot named James Houston Jr. who had served on the Natoma Bay and died in combat. And the stuff that he says, that our little James says, match up like unbelievably with that life. And he was super little. And it's not like his parents were like World War II aficionados or anything. They weren't. They didn't know any of this stuff till they looked it up. And then at some point he just stopped talking about it because that's what they do. Shanti Devi, this was in the 30s. This was the little girl that started talking about her past life as a woman named Ladki Devi. And she had described her former home, her husband, and even the complications that led to her death. She died in childbirth, and she had all of this information. So her story was really famous, and it got the attention of Gandhi, who sent a team to verify her claims, and they found what she said and the life of the woman she was describing to be very accurate. And then we have Ryan Hammonds. So this is a kid from Oklahoma, and he started talking about being an actor back in the 1930s. He talked about going to these fancy parties and specific locations of places that he had attended, and having a family that he missed that he wished he could see again and stuff. And his parents were like, what in the world? So some research linked him to a man named Marty Martin. He was an actor and a talent agent in Hollywood in the 30s. And this kid knew things about Marty Martin that he couldn't have possibly known, including who his children were. It's wild. Yeah. Oh, Tara said, my son used to tell daycare about his other mom. He would hold it against me that his other mom would have let him have something. Interesting. One time when Matea had an ear infection and had a high fever and she was just super sick, and I was taking care of her, she was like maybe 4. She just looks at me through eyes that just don't even look like her eyes and starts shrieking at me that she wants her mom. And I'm like, I am your mom, and I'm trying to help you. No, I want my real mom. She cried for hours for her real mom. She wouldn't be consoled. It was terrifying. It was awful. But I wasn't sure. Is this a fever talking, or is this a past life talking, or both? It was awful. Yeah. Larry said, my mom had some tapes from a woman named Bridie Murphy. Have you ever heard of her? I have not. Yeah. No, I have not. Interesting, though. All right. Well, experts, psychologists say that these could be forgotten knowledge resurfacing or the influence of media or parental cues. Of course they could. But frequently with past lives, parents are like, these kids are talking about things that they don't know anything about. What that their kid would have had no way to be exposed to. And I say that especially, no, she does not remember that, Lillian, at all. Um, I say that especially about these kids that were in these little villages in India where Stevenson had gone, because they did not have the kind of tech we do. It would be easy to say, okay, well, maybe somehow a documentary on World War II got turned on and, maybe he listened to all of it. Maybe it got stuck in his memory somewhere, or, there's a lot of ways you could maybe find a way to validate that with our modern tech. But when we're talking about children in countries, and this was back in like the 80s and 90s that Stevenson was doing his work anyway, they didn't have exposure to the kind of tech that would give them the information. But of course, a lot of people do believe this is evidence of reincarnation. So some signs that a kid might be remembering a past life: recurring dreams or nightmares about unfamiliar events, detailed knowledge of historical events, places, or cultures that they haven't been exposed to, strong emotional reactions to specific people, places, or objects, unexplained fears or phobias that don't seem to connect to current experiences. How to help your child. This is big because people sometimes get too excited about their kids having a gift. And I have seen this with my own eyes too many times where people coach the hell out of their kids or they get way too wound up about something that their kid said. And before you know it, they're coaching them, coaxing them, creating a narrative that wasn't really there. So don't be them. Be careful. Listen without judgment. Encourage them to share, but avoid leading their questions or leading questions that could influence their responses. I would also say don't make them recount this to every person that they come across. This is what sullies this whole experience. Document details. Write down what they say, especially names, dates, locations, to see if any patterns emerge. Seek help if needed. If memories are causing distress, consider consulting with a therapist or a practitioner experienced with past life work. I think that for parents, this stuff might be super fascinating. Great. But realize that it could actually be traumatizing and terrifying to your kid. So be careful at the way you approach past life memories in children, especially your children, because you're opening. This is a giant can of worms that has a lot of emotion packed behind it for them, even if it doesn't for you. So be careful at the way you approach this kind of stuff. You really need to be very, very thoughtful. All right. Kelly's feminist rehistory. For one thing, her podcast is in the top 15 for women in history. So good job, Kelly. That's amazing. So here's what she says about this podcast and blog post. In light of recent events, this week's Bitch Story blog and podcast episode highlight the history of transgender people, some which goes back thousands of years. In this week's blog, Kelly lists several cultures who acknowledged a third gender or some kind of non-binary gender expression. I absolutely loved what she said. And a good reminder, trans people have always existed and cannot be erased. Kelly, I love you. Thank you for that article. I know, I've probably said this on this show before, but I have had some dear friends that are transgender. I've known a few families raising transgender children. This topic is near and dear to me, and the fact that we have a political climate in this country currently, and well, for the last while now especially, that is so hell-bent on persecuting against less than 1% of our population. A population of people whose attempted suicide rate is at 40% is horrifying to me. I'll never stop talking about it. I'll never quit defending that. They've always existed. They cannot be erased. All right, my tip of the week, I just put that group past life regression meditation that I provided last week. I thought some of you might want to try it again, or at least, or maybe for the first time. So I left it here for you. Christie's energy exercise is to clear your bubble. It's a good one right now. You might be feeling kind of prickly, like being around other people is a little painful, and you would like to not experience that anymore. And if that's the case, this is a good one for you. Over at True Crime Squad, there's plenty of stuff going down. Celestial Wisdom with Jamie Dawn. She has a brand new video, Pisces in Virgo, the North and South Node Part 2. Part 1 is posted over on her YouTube, as well as a brand new episode that she did with her daughter, Tatiana. So she has a lot of new content over there. And that's Jamie Dawn on YouTube. So lots of meditations over at Planet Meditation. And there you go. That is luminous this week. So I hope you found a gem here or there. But let's talk a little bit more. I found a great compilation. When you get people talking about past life memories in children, this is kind of like asking people, have you ever, do you believe in ghosts? Or have you ever had an experience with a ghost or a spirit? I'm always amazed at who comes out of the woodwork in these conversations. I've posted that question on my Facebook page many times over the years, or iterations of it. And I'm always amazed at who responds. It's not my metaphysical friends. They do too. It's my deeply religious friends. It's my random friend from high school that I haven't talked to in 20 years. It's men, it's women, it's everybody. That's who responds to the question about experiencing a ghost or a spirit. And it is fascinating to me because have people experienced it? Hell yes, they have. They might not talk about it in the same terms that you do. But at any rate, I have asked about past life memories before and gotten some really interesting answers. But I didn't do that this time because social media. But but I did go poking around because this question has been asked on Reddit a million times. And Redditors are interesting. Reddit is much more anonymous, which on one hand, it opens the door for people to, be disingenuous. And so anything that you read or hear on any social media site, you should take with a grain of salt, but definitely Reddit. But there were a lot of really fascinating answers here. So I'm going to share some with you that I thought were pretty compelling. So this person said, back pre-pandemic, I was watching my friend's then 3-year-old for her, and he saw a big military ship, and he got this kind of faraway look and said, I remember when my boat sank, there were so many sharks. I said, what? And he blinked and looked at me and said, what? And then started asking questions about the boat. I mentioned it to my friend, and she said, yeah, he does that sometimes. Wow. This person, Ace Trainer Emily, said, when I was very young and still unable to string sentences together, my mom and I were sitting at the dining room table. She was crying, and I comforted my mother by telling her, without any babbling or hesitation, it's okay. I used to be your great-grandmother. I'll take care of you. I have no memory of this, and my mom said I went back to my baby talk immediately after. She stopped crying, probably because I scared the shit out of her. That's so sweet, though. But yeah. Whew. Auntie Pink said, I used to watch my nephew when he was about 3 or 4. One day he was at my house and pointed to a magnet of Arizona. It had a picture of the desert with rock formations. Kid pointed to it and asked where it was. He said he used to live by red rocks like that with his first family. The first family all had straight dark hair. His current hair is blonde and curly. And he said he had a mom, a dad, and a brother, and that was until he went too far into the desert, too close to dark, and got eaten. Not by dogs, not by wolves, but smaller. I said, by coyotes? And he kind of mouthed the word and said, oh, that's what you call them. Then he was sad and didn't want to talk about it anymore, so we had lunch, and that was the first and last time he mentioned it. Eyes Peeled said, my coworker has a son who, when he was about 3, you notice the theme? These kids are all around 3 years old. 2 to 6, that's what they say. My coworker has a son who, when he was about 3, told her he used to grow rice and lived in a place where 2 rivers met. He was able to name the rivers, and she located it on a map of Eastern Asia. pretty wild indeed. For kids to have that specific of a memory, to be able to have the actual name of something, whether it's their name or the names of landmarks and stuff, that's amazing. When I was 3 and playing with a corkscrew, I blurted out, "I used to have one of these when I had black hair." I'm blonde. My parents said they asked me what it was, and I responded, "Well, it's used for opening wine." They said I would have had no way of knowing that. Arcania said, "My father said when my brother was 3, he said something like, 'When I was older, I had a pretty girlfriend, and we died in a car.'" Also realize when these kids are, this is little children with their little, baby talky voices relaying stuff like this. It's as chilling as it is fascinating, I think. Especially for people who, these are your children. You cherish them. You love them. You would die for them. And they're telling you all about their lives with somebody else that you maybe didn't have anything to do with. Is it uncomfortable? I think it's kind of uncomfortable. Maybe you feel a little territorial. I don't know. All right, Zach Zenny said, at the time, 5-year-old son, who is now 31, woke up one day and asked me, "Where's Banjo? When are we going to look for him?" I was shocked. Banjo was the name of our family dog, a bull terrier that we had on the farm when I was still a preteen. One day there was a flash flood in our area, Uppington, South Africa, and my little brother was stuck in the middle of the raging Orange River on a rock. Banjo jumped in the water to try to rescue my brother, but he got swept away by the powerful current, and we never saw him again. My brother clung to the rock for a full 19 hours before the water was safe enough to cross in a boat to get him. My brother was distraught about our dog having been presumably killed by the flood. Only 2 years after that incident, my brother was killed while cycling when a speeding vehicle hit him from behind. I have never told my son about Banjo. There's no way he could have known that name. My son has been acting in ways that remind me of my deceased brother. They have the same favorite color. They like the same food. They both love to sing. I can't help but think that the soul of my brother migrated into my son somehow. Sure. Zach, of course it did. Yeah. I thought that was an amazing story. Sometimes spirits just want to be back in their family if they can, back with their family who they deem to be their family, so they will come back to a same family unit. Some people wait. Some people want to wait, choose to wait until, the people that they're connected to come back too. I've heard that in past life regressions and in mediumship a lot of times. But other people don't. They come back pretty quick. I have no doubt. That is his brother. Electronic Speech said, when our son was 3, maybe 4, he described his life as a ballerina on a stage. From the lights to the music to the applause. His next words chilled me to the bone. I was at a party on a boat, and I fell into the water. Then poof, I was here. I asked him to relate the story when his father came back from a business trip a couple weeks later, and it was identical. But after that, we never discussed it again. Quasi127 said, my little brother was born just after 9/11. When he was a toddler one time, he went on and on about how he used to work in a tall building and wore a suit and tie. Needs More Tuba said, when I was a kid, I told my parents that I died in a fire on a ship during a war. That alone isn't super special, but they asked me what kind of ship, and I said, a blockade runner. That's very specific knowledge for a small child, right? If I remember correctly, it was called the Zephyr and was in Charleston, South Carolina at some point. I've not found any info about that ship being real, but I haven't remembered in years. KLWK said, my son said once, Mommy, when I was big and you were little, I remember when we danced in the kitchen. The only person I ever danced in a kitchen with as a child was my grandfather. My little brother said when he was 3 or 4, when I was a grown-up, I went to war and I never came back. Whew. Jessiter22 said, when my son was 4, we had driven past a cemetery. He asked me if I remembered when he died and was buried. I said no, and I asked him what he meant by saying that. He said he had died, was buried in a cemetery, and that's when he started growing in my belly. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up when he said this. He doesn't ever remember saying it. Whew. Aprabal said, between the ages of 3 and 5, I talked about when I lived in Ireland, and I was able to tell my parents the names of the places that I remembered. My mom said she was in absolute shock because I was so casual about it. Also, this was in the early 80s in South America. There was no internet or anything like that. We're not Irish, so no one in my family has ever been to Ireland or has any interest in it. One day I just stopped talking about it. Quidditch Galleon said, at age 5, my parents bought me one of those toy police cars, and I spent a little while playing in it, but apparently didn't seem happy. My parents asked why I didn't seem to be liking it, and I apparently told them I don't like it because I remember being stabbed inside a car like this before I came here. I said my skin was black then, though. They said they were a bit taken aback by it and just didn't speak about it anymore. Certesy said, my mom told me that when I was 3 or 4 that I scream-cried when we passed an old blue Volkswagen Bug. I told her that was the car I died in. It was apparently very hot and I had a baby in my belly. Whew. Miriam67 said, when my brother was a toddler, he said something to my mom about throwing hay in the window for the horses. My grandfather died before his birth and was a farmer. The barn had windows, and he would just throw the hay in the windows for the horses to eat. My mom was really freaked out, but never said anything else about it again. Imperious Operandi said, my 5-year-old daughter said to me, I was in your belly twice, Mama. The first time I died before I came out, but I came back. I did lose my first pregnancy at 8 months before getting pregnant. Did lose my first pregnancy 8 months before getting pregnant again. She was never told that. I don't know what it was, but that's what happened. Interesting. Many times I have been told that children came back that were a miscarry or a stillborn that still had every intention of being here. Some that came directly back to that parent. Some that waited and came back in the next generation or two. But I've heard that in mediumship a lot of times. My daughter, this is Raspberry Sweaty, said, my daughter asked me, remember my fancy hat? And when I said no, she said, yeah. Before I was dead, I used to work in a bank. I saved my money and bought a hat in a round box. I was on the bus and a man almost sat on it. Then the bus crashed and I died. She was about 3 years old and totally casual about it. Dr. Pirate 42 said, I don't believe in the paranormal. I'm a pretty reasonable guy. I have degrees in science and healthcare, and I'm pretty grounded. But since I was a child, I have had a memory of me stumbling out the back door of a club. I couldn't hold myself, either really drunk or on drugs, and I slipped down a staircase and hit my head in the alley and died. In my memory, I was about 19, I was thin, I had long blonde hair, I was wearing a brown-red leather jacket. I remember the neon signs, the staircase, the door I walked out of, even the interior. I can paint the picture perfectly if I had any talent in art. So anyway, 2 years ago, I took a trip to Budapest, and while enjoying the ruined pubs with my wife, I found the alley. It was funny because I remarked to my wife earlier when we arrived that I felt something about Budapest that felt like home and familiar, and I felt oddly too comfortable there, like I could have never left. I think about this often. Fascinating. And then last one, Cowboy1297 said, I'll answer for my grandpa since he passed. My dad and uncle said to me that when I was 3 or 4, I once looked at my grandpa and said, JB, do you remember when we went bar hopping in Australia between island campaigns during the war, and I tried to flirt with the brown-haired Australian girl before I died on that island? Apparently I said that, and my grandpa admitted that during World War II, he and his friends went bar hopping, and one of his closest friends tried to flirt with a brown-haired Australian girl and later died in the Philippines. Wow. That's amazing. Also, JB was Grandpa's initials and what he went by when he was in the military. But this little guy at 3 didn't know that. He was just Grandpa to him. Fascinating stories. I mean, I could read you stories all day from people who have had experiences. I think it's amazing. I just think it's so fascinating. It's such fascinating work. It's such a fascinating concept to consider. So that's what I have for you today, but I hope that got you thinking a little bit about your own past life potential or your children's or things that have maybe been said to you in the past that, sparked something, but pretty interesting. I do want to let you know that I am a professional psychic advisor over at 12Listen. You can find me over there every day doing readings and healings and everything in between. And I would love to work with you over there. That's a really good way to connect with me. That's number2listen.com. If you head over there and I'm not there, just do a callback request or a scheduled call, and I'll get a text that lets me know that somebody's waiting on me, and I'll head over. That's the easiest way to do it. So I would love to connect with you there for anything I can do to help you. I absolutely will. Those were a compilation from Redditors, Lillian. Yeah. Pamela said, past life. I'm lucky if I remember what I did this morning. Well, past life memories are a little like dreams, You don't, they're not in the right place in your brain to hold on to them for very long. But I don't know. I don't know if anything is in my life at this point. Anyway, thanks for being here. Again, if you won something in the Christmas giveaway, keep an eye out. It should come to you this week. And I appreciate you guys very much. I'll be back here next week, same place, same time, of course. And in the meantime, you can find me over at 12Listen, and I would love to connect. So thanks so much for being here. This has been the Katie Weaver Show here on 12 Radio, where we're changing the way you listen to the world.